Oh, here we are on the Dynasty Roundtable, Matt Babich. We're back. It's weird being like we do this every other week now, so I don't get to see Matt Babich. I miss your scent sometimes.
My scent?
Yeah,
Since when can you smell me?
That's
How
a good
close are you
point.
to my apartment?
That's a good point. That's kind of weird that I said that. To be
I don't know.
honest,
I think you were imagining. You can imagine what someone smells like. I think that,
Yeah.
I can tell. Matt looks like he smells good. Like he has like a nice, almost like perfumey but masculine smell to him.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly what I go for.
I picture, like, you remember the old Abercrombie and Fitch stores? Like, they had the guy spraying the stuff all the time.
I have a bottle of Fierce in my bathroom.
There you go. I do know what you smell like, so it's not weird. So
is this Christian Watson shit all just a ploy to get closer to me? Because if you want to spend more time with me, you can just say that.
You'll never know, Matt Babich. You'll never know unless I tell you. But anyway, we have a special guest here tonight from the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast and from RotoWire. The great Alan Seslowsky is here. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining us this evening on the Dynasty Roundtable.
It's nice to be with sane people on a Roto Underworld Player Profiler podcast for once. Normal is good sometimes.
I'm not sure you have seen a lot of our programming, then, Alan, because give us about 20 minutes and we'll derail. I promise you.
Oh yeah,
you're amongst friends. It's my world of normal. So I meant that Theo and Matt Kelly are too square for me. Is what I meant.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Not enough bicycle seat talk between the two of them.
Exactly. I feel like we can really be ourselves here tonight.
Absolutely. So we'll get into it. We have so much to talk about coming up right now. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Matt Babich. Jahmyr Gibbs. Something happened with Jahmyr Gibbs, didn't it?
Yeah, the genie came out of the bottle. And this is the moment we've been waiting for. All the Jahmyr Gibbs truthers. David Montgomery, who's missed a few games due to some torn rib cartilage. We wish him a good recovery. Jahmyr Gibbs finally took advantage against Las Vegas. Just defeated team. We saw they're clearing house now. Jahmyr Gibbs has ruined the Raiders, or maybe saved the Raiders, depending on how you look at it. But we see all these tweets now saying the Jahmyr Gibbs buy window is closed. So we'll get right into it. Alan, the people need to know, is Jahmyr Gibbs worth a premium? Is the buy window truly closed, or is there still an opportunity to get him on your rosters?
Yeah, I mean, this is part of like a bigger conversation because we have it every year with a different player. So right now it's Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Last year it was Ken Walker. It was Travis Etienne at one point. I think that you have to be in Dynasty. You guys play a lot of Dynasty. I'm not going to tell you anything that's going to shock you, but you have to be willing to run into a burning building with these players. The time to buy Jahmyr Gibbs is when he got hurt. I mean, I don't know about you. I never felt like Jahmyr Gibbs was in danger of being a bust, like ever. Like I didn't feel that way about DeAndre Swift until it was too late, So like, with Quentin Johnston, we kind of feel like, is it ever going to happen? You have that doubt creep in. Maybe you don't. I don't know. But you don't want to now overpay for the running back. It's okay to overpay for a young wide receiver that breaks out. Like, it's okay. Go overpay for Puka Nacua. But so I would say, yes, you want to just, you're on to the next buy low. I would say that I think in one league, I was able to buy Jahmyr Gibbs for a first and a second round pick when he was hurt. And now if I wanted to sell him, I could sell him for 2 first round picks to somebody, right? So to answer your question directly, yes, the window is shut unless you want to overpay, and nobody wants to overpay.
Yeah, it comes back to Dynasty fundamentals, buy low, sell high, like it always comes back to that. And yeah, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, I remember, and I don't know if you know, Alan, but I'm the biggest David Montgomery fan in the world. I've been shouting it from the rooftops before the season started. So I always knew that Detroit had a plan for this, right? They weren't just going to throw Jahmyr Gibbs right in, kind of an undersized running back, but you saw it. I felt right from the Chiefs game. He didn't get many opportunities, but when he got those opportunities, like, oh my goodness, gracious, like this guy's got some juice to him, right? It's something that David Montgomery doesn't have, for sure. I mean, David Montgomery is not a breakaway run artist. I'll be the first to admit it. So yes, the window has passed, at least in my opinion. I think the real answer is, if you need a cheap running back in Dynasty, I might shift my gaze back to David Montgomery. I think that, like, because he's going to be healthy after the bye week. He should be good to go.
What's cheap though? What does cheap mean?
I think isn't a second round pick. Does that sound fair? Like if you're a contender,
I don't think you're going to get him. I don't think Matt. So? No way, right?
I don't think so. That's his value preseason before we knew what he for sure was going to be in this offense. I don't think it's getting it done.
The question is, guys, I'm going to put this on you. Would you, if you're a contender, you're a top 3 team, top 4 team, would you give your first rounder next year to get Montgomery?
See, the trick I would do is I would see if I can get a little bit something extra, see what their roster has, because it feels like it's right in between. Like
I'll give you Sky Moore with them too.
Yeah,
I'll take the roster spot. I mean,
yeah. I'm not, man. Sky Moore, man. I was, for a player that I was so high on coming into the season, it's just like it's completely flipped, and it's Rashee Rice now. I mean, and we know that answer, unfortunately. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what some of the trades are for David Montgomery, because I can tell you this. I know this might make Matt Babich's head explode. I'm in a rebuilding. I took over an orphan. I have David Montgomery. I have no use for him, really. Just trying to get a first round pick for him. Can't do it. Well, maybe I should try again. I don't know. We'll see. Like a second and a third plus Kendre Miller. Would that do it? Are we getting closer?
Don't you guys agree, though, that like the best time to sell Montgomery, if there's no trade deadline or if it's pushed back, is let him come back and have like 80 yards and a touchdown? You don't want to sell him now because then you're selling low, like you said.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and given the nature of his injury, I wouldn't be shocked if he takes a full game back before he truly hits that mark. So on the flip side of it, there could be another even buy low opportunity if there's some overreactors to any sort of, 35% snap share kind of game in his return. But to answer your question directly, Alan, absolutely I'm giving up a first, because if that's where my team's at, right, I'm clearly a running back away. I need a running back. And we look at the 2024 class, not very running back heavy. So unless it's a super flex league, and I think I, want that 10th pick for maybe a Michael Penix Jr. that proves that he's worth a first round pick, maybe I'm holding on. But I view myself as a manager. I'm closer to the Rams. Like I'll sell it all. I want to win now and in the future, but that mindset is only good if you're winning. So if you're going to hold, if you have the opportunity to sell David Montgomery for a first and you hold, you better win the ship.
Yeah, look, you're making Seth smile. He's like, "Wow, I can sell this guy for a first." Like, look at this. You're giving him ideas. There's smoke coming out of his ears right now. I'm formulating trades in my head right now. Like that's an interesting thought that you brought up, Matt, because I know some people who wouldn't go to where you just went. Like they wouldn't, like if you're an win now team and you need that extra piece, say that, you lost a running back, like say you had J.K. Dobbins or like, I don't know, like, would you do like, and you had just had the pieces, right? Like, I don't know. There's some people who just aren't willing to go there. Like, and that's an interesting question for Alan. It's like dynasty philosophy. Alan, are you let's push the chips in kind of guy? You've heard there's I'm a win always guy, right? I'm never rebuilding. I'm never rebuilding. It would have to be, I would have to have one of the grossest roster ever to even think about rebuilding, because look how many times like your team just has bad luck, whether it's performance luck or injury luck. Last year, if you had Michael Pittman, you thought like, oh my God, can I even get a second round pick for this guy? Now you couldn't even buy him for a first, right? And that's just one little small piece. It's not like an elite piece, right? So your team could suck this year. You could be sitting there with 3 wins right now, with 2 wins. And then a few things happen in your favor. A few guys get jobs. Tajay Spears all of a sudden is a starting running back in the NFL. Oh, I got my RB2 set, done. And then, Cortland Sutton this year, right? If you thought he was a dead piece last year, now all of a sudden in these like sick leagues where there's 4 flexes, he's starting every week for you. So I'm always trying to win, but I'm a little bit cautious about spending my first round pick. But in Matt's situation where he talked about like to say I lose Saquon Barkley in a week heading into the playoffs, I'll spend the first for David Montgomery if he's already at that producing level.
Yeah, to kind of paraphrase something that Scott Connor said, I'd rather be known as the guy who whiffed on trading a first for David Montgomery than a guy who just sat on his roster and finished 4th in the league.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
He remembered for something.
Right. Unfortunately, I made a lot of. We all have. We've all made these horrible trades that we regret that really set our teams back. I 1 year after Juju Smith-Schuster broke out, paid 2 firsts and 2 seconds for him. And then obviously the next year he was wide receiver 70, I think. And that just killed my team for a couple of years. And then I compounded it with other trades. So we all make these horrible trades when we first start playing Dynasty that we learn when's the right time to, we have one bazooka shot, right? That's that first round pick. And we know when to use it once you've been playing for 7-8 years. Some people don't, but for the most part, you know when to use it.
Yeah, no, I made one of those trades this year for Daniel Jones in a super flex league, that we've chronicled on this because the theory behind it was, oh my God, Daniel Jones, I think he's going to take the next step with Brian Daboll. The signs were there, so even I with all this information that I have and all the research that I do, it can still happen to anybody, and I was a quarterback needy team in a super flex, thought I was a contender.
What'd you pay? What's the iron price?
It was a package deal. I got I'd have to look back at it, but I ended up giving Garrett Wilson in a first for Daniel Jones, a starting tight end, and another player or something like that. So
we've all been there, right, Matt? Yeah, you can remember your worst trade also, I'm sure,
Oh my gosh. I gave up, I secured Mike Evans and I gave up a 2022. This was in 2021. I gave up a 2022 first and a 2024 first, which ended up being the 101.
At least Mike Evans has been producing, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he produced,
right.
But at the same time, I'm getting 30-point spike weeks from Mike Evans. That's pushing me to 2 and 7 instead of 1 and 8. So it didn't really do me any good.
Yeah, I'm sitting there with Juju Smith-Schuster on my roster, missing 2 first-round picks. Give me a freaking break, all right?
It cost the Patriots $30 million.
They let Jacoby Myers go and they signed Juju. Man.
Yeah, for the record, I meant Juju after his rookie season. Okay, when he was the consensus, or not, he was 80% of the people wanted. He was Dynasty wide receiver 1.
Oh,
in consensus rankings at one point.
I was in startups where Superflex tight end premium startups where he was a first round pick.
Yeah, sick.
Yeah,
sick.
No, crazy.
Michael Darian in the chat said, worst trade I've ever made in Dynasty, Kelsey for David Johnson.
Yeah.
That one hurts.
Yeah. What's it called? I bought David Johnson, what ended up being, it was like a first round pick the following year, which ended up being the 101 for Saquon Barkley. And I gave him Joe Mixon as a sweetener. So I also ended up with a bad David Johnson share, which, by the way, I flipped for 3 first-round picks to some other sucker. Well, that's when we were still trading 3 first-round picks for running backs. You guys experienced that at one point, right? That those trades don't happen anymore.
I'm too young for that, unfortunately.
I think I was at the tail end of that. I saw a few of those go down, and I was so early, and I was how come I can't make that trade?
Jonathan Taylor for 3 first-round picks, I think was probably
he was the last one for it to happen. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
All right.
Well, speaking of rookies that outperform expectations and get some surreal value, during our regular season shows, we've been doing kind of temperature checks on rookies and sophomores because those are 2 stages in a player's career where their value is the most volatile. So there's a lot of value opportunities with rookies and sophomores. So we'll start with our rookie temperature checks. We're gonna go around the table and say whether we're above, at, or below market on a certain player. And we'll kick it off to you, Alan. Rashee Rice, where are we at with him?
So I think I'm at market, but the market has gone higher, right? I mean, right now, if we redrafted our rookie drafts, everyone watching your show has done a gazillion rookie drafts, and he was going, 2.3 to 2.8 in our rookie drafts. He'd be he might go ahead of Jackson Smith and Jigba. He would go ahead of Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? I mean, we all know Puka Nacua would go in the first round. So I think I'm at market, knowing that his market's higher. But isn't it amazing that he got shoved down the rookie board because of what happened with Sky Moore? And Sky Moore got shoved up the rookie board the year before because he was just the receiver with Patrick Mahomes. We didn't even care about like their profile, their talent. So short answer though, I'm at market. I'm willing to trade a good player to get Rashee Rice on my roster. I don't know if I would like give up like my first round pick next year because you want that like liquid first, but at market, knowing it's a high market for him.
Yeah, I'm putting him on the block. I think, to be honest with you, because I think it could have happened at this trade deadline. Really, I mean, I think the Chiefs are going to be in the market for adding a veteran wide receiver in the offseason. Again, like you look at some of the metrics, the target share 13.1%. I know he's a rookie, right? So I have to I'm factoring that in too. Route participation on the season isn't quite to 50%. I assume that's going to go up, but there are a lot of other receivers. I mean, Sky Moore's still there. I know MVS is a field stretcher. I know, and obviously Kelsey, and they're including Pacheco more out of the backfield as a receiver. I think his value right now just kind of, and I don't know how you all feel about it. I think his value is a little bit higher than it should be.
That's
so
fair.
I'd be willing to put him on the block and see what I can get. But I'm feeling really good because if you picked him in the second, maybe even probably second round of your rookie draft, maybe third, maybe he slipped there. Probably not, but.
Would you take JSN or him right now?
Oh, I would be a team JSN.
Okay, that's fair.
For sure. What about you, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, we can't get too carried away with rookie season performances. We were getting a little carried away thinking that JSN was going to come in and immediately crack this consolidated DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett target share. Nearly 2 years of experience with Geno Smith. It was a lot to ask for to have Jackson Smith and Jigba blow up right away. That being said, his usage has been very concerning. Incredibly low ADOT, not seeing a lot of down the field targets, but we've seen the highlights of what happens when they do use him in those expanded roles. So still believe there. If I could sell Rashee Rice and maybe even plus, if that's how drastic it's gotten, I don't think it has, to get Jackson Smith and Jigba, I would. We kind of use Keep Trade Cut as our crowdsource. You can only, all these expert rankings, they're going to be a little bit more accurate, whereas Keep Trade Cut is somewhere more of a potential estimation of where the public views somebody. And Rashee Rice is wide receiver 30.
That's
so
fair.
it's very fair. And so to side with Alan, I think I'm at market. The obvious worry is the early season target share, only a 13% target share, but he's top 10 in targets per route run. 50+% route win rate. He's 11th in yards per route run. And so he's getting red zone looks as well. So commanding red zone targets.
Right.
Now, I firmly believe that this is all a mind game by Andy Reid. There's no reason not to use him more right now. And I think maybe the Chiefs don't think they have to. So I do expect some increased usage down the line. I think his market could potentially get even higher. And Seth makes a great point about, the Chiefs being potentially a wide receiver seeking team in the offseason. So I'm at market. I'm not selling yet because I think all the peripherals are there for him to start blowing up. And we've seen Kansas City's offense struggle lately. So they're going to have to start just pounding what works best. And that's throwing the ball to Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce.
Can I just add one more thing to maybe persuade Seth a little bit more? And it's that when you talk about dynasty and rookies specifically, it's like, who's the quarterback they're attached to for the next few years, right? JSN, again, this isn't a JSN versus Rashee Rice thing. I like JSN as well, but there's two rookies that are attached to really good situations. One of them is Rashee Rice. And like you said, they'll be looking for a veteran. I don't think I mind that with Patrick Mahomes going to throw the ball a lot. And the other one is Quentin Johnson. He's attached to a really good situation for a few years. I'm not saying he's good, but he's the other player that's attached to Justin Herbert's an elite quarterback that's a rookie for the next few years. So I think that matters.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't dream of a better situation for a wide receiver for sure. I think you're being very selective with I got an offer for Rashee Rice in the Dynasty Roundtable League that I couldn't reject fast enough. And it was a 2024 second and 2024 third, right? I can't give him away for that. Like that's you gotta. So I like if you get an offer that's like, oh my man, they're offering me that for Rashee Rice, I'd consider it. But I'm seeing what people would be willing to give up for him, because I like this Chiefs offense. We've seen it struggle, and maybe Rashee Rice can be the solution to that, like Matt was saying. But I do think that they're going to be in the market for a veteran. But I do think Rashee Rice is going to be a valuable dynasty asset too. So you have to weigh all that and make the best decision you can for your team.
So using that same logic with, the situation that the rookie is in, are we underweight on Puka Nacua, as we do not know what's going to happen after Matt Stafford leaves?
So you're making an excellent point, right? And we're about to find out when Brett Rippon is the quarterback this week, what that's going to look like, right? So we're not just giving him average quarterback play. We're not like saying, okay, Andy Dalton, go in and let's see what happens. We're giving him like D- quarterback play. If he comes through this week, forget it. This is just like, the new 1.1 in every format. Kidding. But but I'm just saying is that I think that the difference with Nacua is that he's produced at such an elite level that you're willing to forgive some of those other things. But it's such a good point what you're saying, and I cannot wait. That's one of the most intriguing games this weekend. And it's only a sample one. Even if it was good or bad, it's not really mean anything. But I want to see it with Brett Rippon, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated. That's a fascinating storyline to be sure. I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's going to be so intriguing to see how that all plays out with Kupp. And, they're going to be likely playing from behind, so they're going to be chucking the ball. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. But that's a great point, Matt.
All right. So Seth, we'll kick it back to you for player number 2. Marvin Harrison was very much above market on this receiver prior to the NFL draft. Stamped Josh Downs as his number 1 receiver in the class on his Steve Smith shit with that one. So Seth, guy who's clearly the number 2 here in Indy for the foreseeable future, where are we at on Josh Downs?
This is fascinating because you start to look at the numbers for Downs and you're like, holy crap, he has a 20% target share already. He's on the field all the time. He's number 1 in the league in slot snaps, so he's playing a lot of the slot. I don't know if he quite qualifies as a slotty Pippin. We'll have to ask PPR Tyler about that. I don't know, but man, this is, I'll admit it, this is a player that I wasn't as high on before the process. I mean, he looks really, really good. And with Anthony Richardson coming back, I mean, that we'll see like how that fits together, right? Like Anthony Richardson, I wish we could have seen Anthony Richardson play more with Josh Downs, but
what week did Richardson get hurt, guys? Was it 3 or 4? What year does he? What week was he out?
I think it was week 4, wasn't it? He got hurt a couple. He had the concussion in week 2, and then he had I think it was week 4.
So week 5 is the first Gardner Minshew week. That's when Josh Downs really took off. So this is another one of those interesting quarterback situations, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, no, I would have loved to see more Anthony, because we know Anthony Richardson's the future there, but there's a lot of intriguing metrics here, and I don't know if, and you guys can weigh in on this too. I don't know if Josh Downs, if people really, because with Rashee Rice being on Kansas City, right? Like, oh my gosh, he's with Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if the enthusiasm is there quite yet for Josh Downs, but I could be off base on that. So
it's there.
It's there. Okay.
He's above Rashee Rice and keep trade cut by 2 spots.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then but I'm probably at market with Josh Downs because I really, really like him.
He's doing the exact opposite thing. Like he's produced for multiple weeks straight. You don't have to guess, but he strikes me as the guy. By the way, you didn't even call me. I just went in second. I figured you were going to anchor, right?
Yeah.
No, that's how it goes. That's how it goes around here.
I'm being a terrible guest. Terrible guest.
No, you're fitting right into the group.
Yeah, this is how it goes.
Opposite, actually.
Sometimes people wait politely for their chance to speak, and I don't. I prefer what Alan's doing right now. So.
Exactly.
Well, I also think you have to be a generous performer. You know what I'm saying? Like you want to make sure. Yeah, you guys get it. We could do a whole half hour on content itself there. I love that kind of stuff. Josh Downs, to me, I could be wrong. And the truth is, we really don't know. We know what we see. We know we have what our pre-draft process and thoughts were. To me, after Josh Downs had a, quote, breakout for a couple weeks, my immediate thought was not just sell him, sell high, right? Because that's what we always say. I do it too. It's terrible dynasty advice. It's like, here, this is what you should do with Josh Downs. So I tested it out in the market. I had my QB2 in one of these Superflex leagues is Geno Smith. I said, I said, if I add Josh Downs to Geno Smith, can I get up a tier to the next level of quarterback? That's how I got Tua on my team. Now, there were some other pieces involved, but the guy was hot on Josh Downs. He loved them before. He stupidly mentioned it in the chat a few times. So I was like, oh, okay. As soon as it happens, this is the guy I'm going after. So my first instinct, and I could regret it, was to pair him with another piece to get up a tier. So that's how I played Josh Downs. I hope he fails.
No, I think that's the perfect way to view it too. Yeah. And you're not just selling him because it's a sell high moment, right? You're being very strategic and saying, you know, I could really use, you know, a Tua, and how is that going to get done? Well, now's a pretty good time to sell Josh Downs, and, you know, the pieces are falling together, and that's how you get a trade done in Dynasty the right way. And to just answer the question directly, I'm pretty much at market, but I'm looking to tier up where I can if I can trade a Josh Downs. That being said, if I'm a young team and like if I am in a full rebuild where my wide receiver core is weak, I think I want to hang on because like I kind of mentioned with Rashee Rice, the peripherals are all there. He's running an elite amount of routes from the slot. I mean, leading all receivers in slot snaps, and that's a very fantasy friendly position to put yourself in, especially when you have a 57% route win rate per player profiler, which is 7th among receivers right now. And then he's also, granted, it's like you said, it's an interesting situation right now with is Gardner Minshew propping him up? I don't think so. I think that has more to do with Anthony Richardson, you know, being a dual threat quarterback. So obviously there's some natural lowered passing numbers there, but at the same time, learning the NFL game, it's going to take a minute. So he has Pittman locked in, understandably so, and Minshew's a little bit more experienced. I won't say he's that much better at going through his progressions, but he at least has the capability to look around the field a little bit. So the peripherals are there. He's getting elite opportunity right now. He looks like a good performer. So depends on the situation, but now's a great time to try and package him.
Can I ask you guys a pivot question here? You just made me think about this. So with Anthony Richardson, right, you're the Colts. You like what you saw, but you're like, all right, this guy is going to get hurt in his career. We've already seen it. Is backup quarterback an important thing for you? They can't just be like, oh, we have Blaine Gabbert. You know, like they need to like strategically think who their backup quarterback is going to be. I'm going to be paying attention to that if I have Josh Downs on my roster. And, you know, it really depends, because some teams you see what happens. Like you have Brett Rippon when Matt Stafford gets hurt. That's not going to be an acceptable if the Colts want to win next year.
I think as far as team building goes in the NFL, I think, and this is just me, I think the backup quarterback's one of the like an underrated position. Yes. Because if you're a quarterback, if you like look at the Vikings now, I mean, I know they went out and made a move for Josh Dobbs, but they have Nick Mullins and this rookie, right? I'm spacing on his name right now. Jaron Hall or Reed? Yeah. Jaron Hall. Yep. Jared Hall. So again, this was a team that was started off really poorly, looking a lot better recently, and they're in trouble. Like I don't know, we'll see. But the backup quarterback is, to me, if I was running an NFL team, I would invest in that position for sure, because especially if I have a contending team and my quarterback goes down for a couple weeks and I just need somebody to not F it up, you know, and just, you know, we'll rely on our defense that hopefully we built well, you know, so.
Yeah, with alpha producers, I'm not as worried about it because we have the Tom Savage corollary kind of propping them up where, you know, if Pittman were playing with, let's say, Brett Rippon, you know, what's going to happen every time Rippon drops back? He's going to look right to Kupp, look right to Pittman, Mike Evans, whoever it is on his team. He's going to be honing in on that particular guy. And so with alpha producers, I'm not as worried about it, but fringe players that need a stable role from a good quarterback to be held up, like maybe like a George Pickens or a Deontay Johnson, I think Mitch Trubisky is serviceable, but if they were rolling out Jaron Hall on Thursday Night Football, I wouldn't be playing either of them. I wouldn't be playing any Steelers at all. So it matters a bit, but at the end of the day, injuries can happen to anybody. So you can't be over wary of it.
We should have to play backup quarterbacks in fantasy.
That
should be that should be one of you. Punters too. Let's make punters a thing.
Point per extra point hold.
Right. I like that. Like hang time, hang time, 5 seconds, you get 5 points.
If the camera shows the backup quarterback talking to the starting quarterback after an interception, 5 points, leadership bonus.
Leadership. I like that. You know what? So I've seen this floated around, and again, I won't derail the show too much here, but I've seen this floated around for the pass interference. The softwares need to implement if your receiver gets pass interfered with, that they get like half the yardage or something like that. A 40-yard pass interference draw should be at least 2 points on for the receiver.
I think that's a good idea.
I think I'm old headed here because I don't want it.
All right.
I like that. Like, cause that is like, there's nothing worse. Let's just be honest. There's nothing worse than seeing your receiver wide open. The cornerback just grabs them because they know it's going to be a touchdown if they don't do something about it. And then it's like, oh, that would have been a touchdown.
And then the running back.
At least get something. Like 2 points might even be. We'll have to talk about this.
Something. Next thing we'll do, we'll be giving points for air yards, right? Real fantasy nerd shit.
On our Denny Carter shit, we are working our way to points per process fantasy. Expected fantasy points per game only.
Can you guys explain expected fantasy points to me? This is the most overused term, and to pretend you're talking to my grandma, that just knows a little bit about fantasy football. When they say expected points, who's making this stuff up?
So it all. I am a data analyst by trade, so I have a hard time getting this to a basic level sometimes. So if you need me to keep dialing it back down, I will. But
remember, my grandmother's in the room.
Yeah, So.
You can't do it. He can't do it.
It's tough to explain it to a grandma, all right? But I'm going to try to explain it to a fantasy football fan.
I have the definition pulled up if you need it, Matt.
You have data behind every single play. So the math looks at every single play that it is analyzing. And so let's say it's from, 1970 all the way up through last week. And it has down, it has distance, field position, time left on the clock. Are you in the 2-minute drill? Is it the top of the first quarter? The game script, or is your team up by 20? Are they down by 20? And so all of these factors control what we would expect to happen in a game. And so based on all of these game factors, like where you are in the field. So at, 1st and 10 on the opponent's 20-yard line.
Okay.
And you get a pass that's 20 air yards. So an end zone pass. You basically take the average of every time that play has ever happened, and you get your expected value. So whenever someone says expected value, it essentially just means the average outcome given a situation.
That's fair. My grandma gets it. Grandma gets it.
If you flip a coin 100 times, you have a 50-50 shot. So you would expect 50 heads and 50 tails.
But let me ask you this, guys. Does it take into account that peak Tom Brady's throwing the ball or Jaron Hall is throwing the ball? Or is it just a complete average of all of that baked into the cake?
That's actually, I'll plead ignorance there. I actually don't truly know if you would take a quarterback's skill or a head coach's scheme. I would assume the latter is definitely not calculated.
Right.
But to my knowledge, it's mostly personnel agnostic.
That makes sense.
That's how I understand it as well.
What's the book definition? What's the book say?
Oh, you ready for it?
Yeah.
You guys, and just so all of our listeners, they can find this information at playerprofiler.com/terms-glossary. So
yeah, and by the way, sometimes I think that we get so lost in the sauce that people appreciate conversation like this. Pull it back.
Absolutely.
I hear this all the time. I want to actually be able to explain it to somebody. So go ahead. And that, by the way, that was an excellent explanation. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think this, Matt, we need to update the definition to have Matt Babich write it. But measures the value of individual plays by calculating the expected points scored based on down, distance, and field position situation at the start of the play, and contrasting it with the situation at the end of the play. So that's exactly what Matt Babich just said.
Yeah, but I think Matt said it better than the book.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I think Matt needs to rewrite the book on this.
He should make a series of videos where you click on the definition, Matt comes up and explains it. I just gave you more work to do.
This is the evergreen content that we can do in February.
Be happy to do that.
Yeah, but I think it would be useful.
A good idea.
Yeah.
No, hey, there we go. Who's the next rookie on the sheet? I
believe it's Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears. So
okay.
I'll just start. Tyjae Spears, we see him. The electricity is undeniable. You look at all the advanced efficiency metrics, how often he's breaking tackles, breaking out long runs, creating yards on his own. It's all a supernova. But he hasn't beaten out Henry for significant touches yet. Henry's not going anywhere this season. So I'm at maybe below market on Tyjae Spears because I believe at the end of the day, one of two things has to be true. With no ACL, he either has a limited lifespan with high injury risk, or he's going to have a backfield partner to keep the tread on the tires. And I lean the latter there. Believe there, he looks, it's disrespectful a little bit given what we saw, but he looks like a compliment back.
Yeah,
he looks like the satellite plus guy, but with his projected usage in the passing game, if Will Levis is going to be running a high octane offense, which he can, I believe, then he has significant PPR value. So I'm at market. I'm wary of the price I'm paying to acquire and the shares where I have him because he was such a cheap rookie pick. I'm holding because there are better days ahead. There are non-Derrick Henry days ahead. But if I don't have him right now, I'm very hesitant as to how much I have to pay because the hype is there. Everyone's the people are in on Tyjae Spears. So it's really easy to say, buy low while Derrick Henry's here, but the price isn't that low right now.
He's one of the guys that didn't gain or lose any value. He stayed exactly where he was when you drafted him in the late second round, right? Or maybe he dripped into the third round. I didn't see that happen too much. Look, everything you said, yes, it's like a fun player to own, but he hasn't produced yet. And like you said, all right, Derrick Henry's going to be on another team next year. Let's just say in our hypothetical. All right, the Tennessee Titans signed Saquon Barkley. They give him the money they want. He's back where he started again. There's almost such a low chance that they give him the keys to the car. It just wouldn't even be good. Like for all the reasons you said with his ACL, lack of ACL issue. And it's just not what he is. He's the perfect complementary back. You said it right. He's a nice player to have. He'll have projectable weeks where he's named the starter because the other guy's out and you can earmark him for 15 touches. So I'm going to be at market, but like the cooler side of that market. I'm using him to get to another one of these players where if someone likes him, I'm going to add him to something else to get to the next level. Or if someone to tier down the other way as well.
I think that's very well said, man. I just pulled up Keep Trade Cut and I just do this to get a feel for it. He's RB20.
By the way, no shame in Keep Trade Cut. I know there's some people shame that. It's supposed to be, it's not a perfect thing, but it's at least a reflection of what the market is thinking today.
Yeah. And man, I agree with a lot of what you said. I'm a big Tyjae Spears fan. But man, RB20 right now, I think, he's, it's going to be interesting. Cause initially I was like, oh man, I'm buying Tyjae Spears. I mean, I'm loving what I'm seeing, but the injury, like after talking with Matt, the injury concerns are real. I mean, it's the Todd Gurley thing, right? It's the same kind of injury. So either he's going to be a complimentary back or he's a shooting star if he gets that role, right? You just never know what's going to happen. And so I know we play Dynasty in 2 to 3 year windows, but at RB20, man, that's probably a bit rich for me, but
yeah, what's it called, guys? I mean, look at the players that Keep Trade Cut has underneath him. I mean, Derrick Henry's underneath him. There's no way. Yeah. And even if Derrick Henry was walking around there with a cane, but he's the starting running back, I'm still going to take him, right? I mean, Absolutely. Rashad White they have low. I know Player Profiler is high on him, so he's probably mispriced here. But I think that. So where are you? You're above or below market? You never said.
I'm below.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so funny. Like you can start because initially, like if you just, like without any research, told Seth Diewold, hey, do you like Tajay Spears? I'll be like, oh yeah, I love Tajay Spears. But then it's like, okay, well, where should he be valued in the market? And you look at keep trade cut, you look at other data points, and you're like, man, I like him, but I don't know if I like him that much. It's such a fascinating conversation to have. And it's like, it's what Dynasty really is. It's like, these are the conversations that shape the values of players. And it's, to me, it's one of the more fascinating things that to talk about, like,
yeah,
and how you could possibly tip the situation in your favor somehow, right? Like, that's kind of what it's all about.
And that's been a big critique of the Dynasty content community lately, is having these conversations where it's just so easy. And I'm not, this isn't at no other channel or anything in particular, but in
Call
general,
out some channels. Call out some channels right now.
No,
let's start a war. Let's start a war. I'm with you. I got your back. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
I actually can't really call anyone out in specificity. My mic gain is going crazy right now.
It sounds good on air. Sounds good on air.
Yeah, we
Maybe
can hear you
on my end. Anyway, it's really easy to say buy low on Tajay Spears. He all these peripherals. He's going to get more. He's going to get more opportunity. Take a step back and actually ask yourself, who is selling Tajay Spears and what are they selling him for? Like, is it
great point?
Easy to acquire him? Is it feasible to acquire him at a reasonable value? And right now, I mean, RB20 is significantly overpriced in my opinion. He is 10 spots above our final rookie, and I think this is a good value opportunity here for Roschon Johnson, who hasn't moved terribly up the public consensus rankings yet. There's been some issues with, fighting through the depth chart with what's his name?
Khalil Herbert and Foreman.
Khalil Herbert. Foreman didn't really. Yeah, I mean, Foreman really was a victory of circumstance there with Roschon Johnson's concussion, but there's another thing that Johnson had to overcome, missing a few weeks. So, Seth, the Bears fan, we'll let you turn it into a Bears show. Give us your monologue, your manuscript on Roschon Johnson.
Well, I think the buy window is going to be long because I know that I think they like Darrington Evans a little bit too. Like, so I think he's going to have a roster spot just to give everybody try to give everybody, based on the Bears talk radio that I hear and the beat reporters that I listen to. So it's going to be like Khalil Herbert's coming back and he's going to play this year. Donta Foreman showed what he can do in reserve role. So I think we're going to have a good opportunity. I think it's good news for Roschon Johnson because I do believe that in 2024, Roschon Johnson is going to be the lead back for the Chicago Bears because I do believe he's the most talented running back out of all four of those guys. And I mean, he can just do everything. I mean, we've talked about it here multiple times, but I just, we're in week 9 right now. The Bears there's really no incentive to rush him back. I mean, it's the Bears I know they just traded for Montez Sweat, but that's a long-term move. So the good news is, I'll keep coming back to this. I think our buy window for Roschon, and I really like him. There's no rush. Like, you can kind of feel out the market, let people kind of sour on him, and then you can pounce when the moment's right.
Yeah, with Roschon Johnson, though, we can handle a committee of 2 in fantasy football. By the way, there was a time in fantasy football, I'm sure you guys remember, where a committee of 2 was like, I'm not drafting the second running back on a team that has 2. What are you, crazy? Yeah. Now it's like, oh, there's only 2? I'm in, right? It's a committee of 3 that's a problem. And then when you add in a running quarterback, that's almost like a committee of 3.5, committee of 4. Now, it's not 100% that Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback for the Chicago Bears next year. I mean, if they get pick 1 and 2, it's almost certain that he's not, right? I mean, it would be an upset if he was, or if they can retrieve some sort of value for him and then take their quarterback of choice at the first pick. So then, the half is gone at least. But it looks like Roschon Johnson, I know Player Profiler loved them. The problem is I'm caught between. I'm like in a love triangle because I do a lot of content work with Player Profiler. And then I do a lot, obviously, with RotoWire, where I work full time. And those guys hate him. They think he's horrible. So, so to them, I'm like, oh yeah, I start telling them all the counterpoints and the other, I'm like really in a love triangle here. So I'm somewhere in the middle. Put it this way, guys, let me ask you, this is a good question for you, Matt. If you have Roschon Johnson, I'm going to give you your money back. I'm going to give you my 2.5, my mid-second, but do you want out of that business, or you're going to hold on to Roschon?
I'm holding on to Roschon. There's better days ahead. And like Seth and yourself painted out the reasonable negatives to his profile, but looking at some of the other backs that are near him, so I'll go one above and then start going through Roschon Johnson. So Raheem Mostert is the first back above Johnson. Obviously right now, if I'm a win now team, I'm trading Roschon Johnson for Raheem Mostert, but I don't think that's getting done ever. Dameon Pierce, gross. Aaron Jones, Jalen Warren, Kendre Miller, Najee Harris, Jerome Ford, James Conner, Khalil Herbert. I don't want any of those running backs. And we're talking about a mid-second. So with this receiver class, we're talking about tier 2, potentially, bottom of tier 2, top of tier 3, depending on how things shake out, receiver. Running backs by the 2-5, it's going to be gross. All the elite quarterbacks are going to be taken. So there is a deep class, and I'm kind of underselling the class on the surface here. But like Seth said, I still firmly believe Roschon Johnson's going to be the backfield leader next year. Justin Fields, likely not going to be the quarterback. Could be Caleb Williams, could be Drake May. So I'm going to buy in on the better days ahead, but I would consider myself on the cooler side of the market in general.
Yeah, no, I am right there with you guys. I mean, it's the Bears historically. I mean, they've done a lot wrong, but I think their approach to running backs is actually pretty good. Like they don't. I mean, I know like back in the day they did, but recent history, it's a lot of let's draft Khalil Herbert in the 6th round, let's draft Roschon in the 4th round, let's sign Donta Foreman. Like it's not a position they really invest a ton in, at least in recent history. And Ryan Poles is a generally a new GM. This is only his 2nd year on the job. So I think Roschon, we're going to have our opportunities if we like him. So I think it's a good thing. And I think it's ultimately a good thing, like how they're handling him too, and not rushing him back from the concussion. And so anyway, I know it's a little frustrating initially for dynasty managers, but I think Roschon's going to be just fine.
Yeah. Harry, what one am I supposed to want there? What really got your rocks off in that name? Was it Jalen Warren, Najee Harris? Was it Dameon Pierce?
Dameon Pierce.
Jerome Ford, Nick Chubb's backup.
Yeah. I think that, listen, there's a clear like polarization with Roschon Johnson, which is great. I mean, this is what you want in your dynasty league. You want someone to want the thing that you have, and it's like you could see a trade going down. We talked about Josh Downs for Roschon Johnson. What a great dynasty trade for someone that needs a receiver. Someone else needs a running back. There it goes.
Mm-hmm. He's a perfect, like if you're a rebuild team, like perfect asset to go get is Roschon.
We need players like that.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get to our struggling sophomores, if you didn't know, back in the summer near the beginning of the season, PlayerProfiler completely revamped their data analysis tool. So they took one of the best data analysis tools in the industry, and they turned it into one of the best data tools in the industry, if not the best. So the data analysis tool from PlayerProfiler is pretty much a daily visit of mine. All these advanced metrics you're talking about, it's a very quick and easy way to create and generate your own reports and filter by games played, team, position, and you can quick export anything. The whole tool is the UI, the user interface is very pretty. It's like Underdog. You feel like you want to go on there and use it, but Can
I give you a practical case use that I did it with the other day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the other day I was, we were trying to figure out, like, is Trey McBride going to have a good game against Cleveland this weekend? Right. So I went on there and I learned, just kind of accidentally, but it was easy to find, that Cleveland doesn't give up many receptions to the tight end so far this year. So I was like, oh, okay. Everyone's pumping Trey McBride this week, but because of the data suite of tools on PlayerProfiler, I was like, you know what? maybe this isn't the week to start Trey McBride. So now I have like a question because I have that information that I found on Player Profiler.
And that's the way to use it. So we're going to take a quick break. And during that break, we'll tell you a little bit more about this data analysis tool.
All right, I want to take a moment today to talk to you about data analysis. The data analysis tool, we listen to the users. What do you want? What do you need? And we made it happen. We added popular reports like a fantasy scoring report, air yards report. And if you want to create a new report, but you don't necessarily want to look through every field, we have quick results. Hey, show me the most popular passing data. Show me the most popular rushing data, fantasy data. Done. And the thing just is much faster than it's ever been. And the report builder got a lot easier. I mean, check this out. We break it down into offense, defense. Show me just fantasy data elements. And then when you get results, hey, show me by draft year. Let's take a look at just certain players that played a certain number of snaps or a certain number of games last year. This is the tool that so many of you have been asking for, plus a bunch of dream features that Billy wanted and Cody wanted and I wanted and Dario wanted. So go to the fantasy tools section, click on data analysis, or go to playerprofiler.com/data-analysis.
We are back with the Dynasty Roundtable podcast live with Alan Seslowsky. So before the break, we were talking about some rookie, potentially risers, potentially fallers. Now we're going to talk about some sophomores who are certified struggling. And the sophomore year is a very pivotal year in Dynasty because clock is ticking on your lifespan as a Dynasty asset. So we're going to go over 3 struggling sophomores and talk about their outlook. Is there any hope left? And we're going to start with Alan and talk to us about Jahan Dotson.
Okay, I thought you were going to go talk some running backs here. Jahan Dotson, all right. Dotson, man, he showed enough so far in year 1 and going even back to Penn State when he was like 20, he had 20 touchdowns in the last 2 years. I mean, the guy was a touchdown catcher. I think he has a Sam Howell problem here, but we saw this week him come alive. There is upside there. It's just that we're missing consistency. I think everything that Dotson has done in his rookie year, and he's already, thank God he's flashed the upside this year. There's enough there to say, look, this is a first-round receiver who's a good player and can get you fantasy points. It's just that he's struggling right now, and there's reason for optimism. Again, calling him a buy low, I guess that's accurate, right? But like, what is buy low? I think that he's a player that you want to get included in a deal coming to your side because, I mean, even if Jacoby Brissett at some point takes over the quarterback, which who knows if he's going to, there was a rumor today that they're going to be courting Bill Belichick to come over and be the coach next year in Washington. But I'm just saying is that anything that changes could be even better for Jahan Dotson. I'm in. I'm a believer. He's already showed it on an NFL field.
Yeah, there's so much uncertainty with Washington right now. I mean, Washington, they just traded away 2 of their two of their pass rushers, Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Looks like Ron Rivera's on the hot seat, so it could be a completely different situation next year. And who knows what they'll decide to do with Sam Howell? I would assume they would keep him. I don't know, but I think I'm leaning by as well. It's funny how things can change. Just last week on this show, I was talking about, oh man, it would be really hard for me to buy Jahan Dotson. I don't know what's going on. They're having him hold kicks on special teams. Like we all saw that on Twitter. So it's just a weird situation. It felt like kind of like the Brandon Ayuk situation where it's like, is he in the doghouse with the coaching staff? I don't know. It's just a weird situation. But yeah, like you said something earlier, Alan, that kind of stuck with me. It's like sometimes you can't be afraid to run into a burning building, right? And Jahan Dotson might just be the more I think about it, the more I think, man, like, yeah, this might be a good opportunity if you liked him initially, and if you're a believer to buy low on him. So what do you think, Matt Babich?
Finally, I can pick a fight. So right. I did mention it 2 weeks ago on this podcast, and I'll admit the week 8 resurgence shook me a little bit, but at the same time, it's his second good game all season, and it's the second game against Philadelphia, who's been one of the more exploitable secondaries for receivers this season. I said it 2 weeks ago. I'll say it now. His 2022 rookie season was fake. It was a mirage. He was propped up on an unsustainable touchdown rate with a Jameis Winston-esque balls deep Taylor Heineke quarterback. Just F it. Jahan Dotson is down there somewhere. We look at 2022 games where he did not catch a touchdown. 0 fantasy points, 2 fantasy points, 2 fantasy points, 3 fantasy points, 6 fantasy points, and 10 fantasy points. So it took until week 17 for him to crack 5 fantasy points without a touchdown in his game. Now, he had a couple of games over 100 yards. He showed some promise, but at the end of the day, he wasn't a target earner, sub 18% targets per route run in back-to-back seasons. He's not a route winner, sub 37% route win rate, which is essentially our player profilers game charters. They watch every snap from every game. I did this for 2 seasons. And they determine, within a certain amount of yardage, was a receiver open on a given play. And so Jahan Dotson not getting open, not earning targets. And so I don't think he has a Sam Howell problem. I think Sam Howell has a Jahan Dotson problem.
It's an interesting way to look at it. And I certainly respect that opinion there. It's just that he was a touchdown catcher. So I agree. He's going to be boom or bust. He's like the type of wide receiver 3 I want on my team, where remember Will Fuller, you'd put him in your lineup and you'd get 36 points or you'd get 0. And you'd be like, wait, was Will Fuller, did he play? So I think there's other, I don't want to just, keep going round and round, but I'm passionate about Jahan Dotson because I'm just looking back. I'm on Player Profiler right now, and I'm looking at those last 2 years of college. It's the same thing that he did in the NFL too, but the 20 touchdowns in 2 years, man. The guy, he's like a supercharged Tyler Lockett. I think that consistency has been missing in his game, and I think that you could win the argument if you just say, hey, he's not consistent even for a volatile wide receiver. You would win the argument.
Yeah, and that's not. I mean, you're a player profiler user because Tyler Lockett is Jahan Dotson's best comparable player.
There you go.
Valid points, and that's the pro argument that keeps me somewhat centered in the argument. So I'm generally selling, but meta dynasty conversation. Am I selling for what I want to sell Jahan Dotson for?
Right.
Not right now. So I do have Jahan Dotson in one league, and I've had him on the trade block for a while. Haven't been able to get anything done. So I'm trying to shop him because I don't. With most of my dynasty setups, his profile is not the one I want to lean on. But
would you take a mid-second for him right now?
Yep.
Okay. Well, then you're out on him, and we're buying. Seth, we're buying for a mid-second.
I for a mid-second, I think I'd pull the trigger.
Yep.
Can I get Romo Dunes in a mid-second? No Dunze? Do you think I can do that? What receiver in 2024 am I getting for a mid-second right now?
Not Rome. Rome's good.
I mean, it's what you think who will be in the second round will not be. They'll move up to a first. Other guys will move down. But yeah, I mean, you guys, you just pull up your Devy rankings and you can kind of see.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I mean, if Rome isn't making it and we start looking at the receivers below him, I think it's a pretty big tier for me, at least. It's a pretty big teardrop. So,
I'll make it a more obscure thing. If someone offered you like a mid 25 second,
no.
All right. Well, then you're maybe still in. I think we caught him. I think he's in on Jahan Dotson now. we browbeat him.
It always happens. I got moved on David Montgomery. I mean,
oh my God. Yeah. David Montgomery. That took some doing, Alan, for me to convince him on David Montgomery. Oh, it was like the same conversation on every show. The audience was like, can we stop talking about David Montgomery?
Well, you know what? He represents a type of fantasy player that's completely boring. He's not fun to own, but you look up in the box score and he's got 17 points. You're like, oh, okay, this works for me. Right. The good thing about Montgomery is no matter what, he's back next year in this same role. And I mean, you said it before, Dynasty played in 2-year windows, 3-year windows. David Montgomery's there for the next 2 years, maybe a third if we're lucky. Right.
Yeah. I think I learned a valuable lesson this Dynasty offseason, as did a lot of people, where we have never really seen a running back get this elite draft capital and then be conserved to start the season. And we've now seen it twice with Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. So the historical data had basically shown running back in the first round, they're going to get this immense level opportunity because of their draft capital. And that's clearly not the way teams are viewing the position anymore. And it even dates back to really Travis Etienne. He didn't, I mean, he got hurt his rookie season, but I don't know if we were going to see bell cow usage right away with where he was at NFL talent wise. So we're in a new era where we have to be a little bit more patient. We can't freak out when we see, slow usage to start their careers.
If only there was a history of Arthur Smith not using his elite draft picks, high usage, right? If only we had that information.
We could do a whole show of us just burning Arthur Smith down to the ground. Like but there has to be a disconnect between the GM and the coach there. Like the GM has to be up in the box, right? With his, with his notepad and his laptop going, why did we draft Kyle Pitts again? Like, didn't we have a whole conversation about how you wanted Kyle Pitts and how we were all in on Kyle Pitts because he's so
out of touch. And he gets to like waltz up to the podium with his stupid fucking mustache and say, "Oh, well, sorry to all those fantasy football players out there. That's not what it's about, Arthur. It's just your asset allocation is atrocious. That's what it's about."
Do you think we'll ever see a fantasy football like person become even like a consultant or to a coach or something? Like, do you ever think we'll have Matt Kelly or Evan Silva, the Titans assistant consultant on the sideline? I mean, do you think we'll ever have a fantasy person there?
I think we're getting there. I think the data teams that NFL teams are putting together are essentially the same thing, because at the end of the day, we just want to use, statistics, information to inform our process and make better decisions, more data-driven decisions, make better bets. And so that's what these data teams are trying to do. And these data-driven teams are starting to put together better rosters. They're starting to target the right players in the right positions. You see the switch to some of these teams just massively prioritizing offensive line in these premium positions early on in the draft. So that's our equivalent. That's as close as we're going to get, but it's a win regardless. And the data-driven teams are starting to separate themselves from the Falcons and the Steelers and the Patriots.
We all know about the Arthur Smith billionaire thing, right? You know that he's a billionaire with a B.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why.
Isn't he the son of the guy
Fred Smith is the founder of FedEx. So,
FedEx, I do remember that now. Yep.
Yeah. So I think Theo told me a couple stories because Theo went to he went to high school or something with him where they were not Theo, but Arthur Smith and his friends were taking private jets back and forth to college games. I mean, this guy does not give an F about when he says I don't care about fantasy, because we all know fantasy and gambling is the lifeblood of the NFL. Without it, I mean, I'd watch my team, but I wouldn't be watching two horrible teams on Thursday night. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, but if I didn't have a bet on it or have a fantasy interest in it, the NFL knows where their bread is buttered, so to speak.
I wonder if there's any sort of correlation between the age of an owner of an NFL team and how data driven they are, because it's just the Steelers, the Patriots, the Cowboys, who are a little bit better than others, but the Bears. A lot of these data-driven teams have some family history involved in these teams that are just they're more in the business of kind of keeping the family business alive than they are like actually being a winning franchise. And so
Virginia McCaskey famously did not. The rumor was she didn't fire Dick Duran because she went to church with him.
And so you don't want to screw with God, right? You don't want to screw with God.
So it's like that's been a thing in Chicago for a long time. It's like George McCaskey's the nicest person in the world, but it's a mom and pop shop. That's been said over and over again. So
it's funny because they say the people argue the Dallas Cowboys are the most valuable franchise in all of sports, but you could say imagine if they were the Super Bowl winning Dallas Cowboys, how much more valuable they would be. So.
Exactly. I don't think they're winning one until Jerry dies, but that's a topic for another day.
He wanted to take Johnny Manziel. Remember his son talked him out of it, and to take Zach Martin, who ended up being a 10-year Pro Bowl guy. I mean, the guy was he was making he was like the drunk guy at your fantasy draft.
Dude, those are the days that I miss. Sorry to go off the rails. Do you remember? I remember being in a fantasy draft where Mason Crosby got picked in the 3rd round. It was amazing by the Packers fan. That was about 6 beers in. That's exactly right. I miss those days so much. Like it's in home leagues, it probably still happens sometimes, maybe. But
back in 2015, 2016, a friend of mine, he ate one of the biggest edibles I had ever seen, and then took Chris Ivory in the 4th round, and we make fun of him for it to this day. Chris Ivory was, by the way, was not a starting running back for an NFL team at this point.
Right. He wasn't on this. He was like a backup for the Saints. He was like the 3rd running back that everyone liked or something, right?
Yeah, like the Saints or the Jags or something like that. I mean, he was not. I mean, he was a 12th, 13th round guy.
Yeah. We had some dude that would just like blow lines on like the dirty toilet in the bar and then come in there and just like take like a player that had been drafted like 4 rounds ago. So yeah, no, I definitely, and that, I say some guy, it might have been me, but I'm like, only
there
kidding,
we go.
Only kidding.
It was the dirty toilet that gave it away.
Oh my God. Yeah. The disgusting like piss toilet and everything. It's,
yeah.
All right. Well,
sticky floor, probably.
There we go. We're just testing the monetization elasticity right now.
Yeah, we're just, this is all research driven.
Hey, it's after 9:00 Eastern time. It's fine.
Yeah.
So the reason I shocked you a little bit, Alan, with the show sheets, because I forgot I had put Dameon Pierce ahead of Jahan Dotson. I had scrolled a little too far in the document. So we'll reel it back on the show sheet a little bit, and we'll bring it back to Dameon Pierce. Struggling sophomore. Is it over for him? He's definitely droppable in redraft, but Dynasty, is there any hope?
I think that you got what you paid for with Dameon Pierce. He was a 4th round running back that got a starting opportunity. This is where draft capital matters, right? I don't think it matters as much as we all say it does, but this is where it matters. He's guaranteed nothing. If he was drafted in the 1st round, like Najee Harris, right? He is Dameon Pierce, but he's going to continue to get opportunities past his usefulness because he's a 1st round running back. Where if the minute Dameon Pierce stops producing, out, see ya. Like you're just a backup running back. So you got what you paid for. You can't even get a 2nd round pick for Dameon Pierce right now. So you're just gonna have to wait for a blow up game and hope there's some consistency if you want to keep using him, because he's not even sellable.
Right there with you. I'm still a fan of the player. I know the metrics aren't on my side, but likely not going to get a starting job unless there's an injury, right? So I don't have much more to add to that. We kind of talked about it on the last episode. It's very discouraging to see games where he's getting 32% of the snaps and that Singletary is getting more of the work, right? That's very, very discouraging. So I'll even go like you can't really start him. You hopefully you've got better options, right? Even though he is on the Texans offense that we all love and that's, up and coming. But, yeah, I don't know. Like my sicko instinct is to see, can I get him for like a 4th round? Like how out is somebody on Dameon Pierce? Like, can I scoop him up for like a cheap price? Like that's where my instinct goes, but I don't even know if it's really worth it.
I would give you Dameon Pierce. Like I would honest, legitimately, I would consider trading him for Fab. And I'm not even being hyperbolic. It's over. I called it in early August. I said Devin Singletary would hit a point where he was going to get 50%.
I want to ask you, what did you see that you called it? Because I didn't see this one coming. It doesn't surprise me, but what did you see that you called it?
Mid-tier efficiency, not very solid receiving usage or efficiency. So on the surface, when you see a guy that ranks like in the mid 30s in a lot of these peripheral metrics, it's a very, you got to pick your spots because it can show a lot of promise. But we saw a Texans team that ran way more than we would have expected them to, given how bad they were. And then they come in and they draft CJ Stroud, and then they play some draft capital in Tank Dell. So I expected the Houston offense to take an uptick in passing attempts. And so Dameon Pierce was not a very good rusher in terms of rushing yards over expected. And so that kind of takes back to the expected fantasy points, where how much rushing yards would we expect a player given his opportunity to get versus how much he gets. And then he's also was graded by PFF as one of the worst pass blockers in the entire league. And that was the big red flag. So why would a Houston Texans go out and sign Devin Singletary, a guy who has always been a mildly effective rusher, just like Pierce, but has been known to be the pass blocking protector for Josh Allen and an effective pass catcher in a pass heavy offense. So they signaled what they didn't see in Pierce and what they did see in Devin Singletary in a completely new regime in Houston. So not only was the draft capital low, but it wasn't even spent by, or consulted by the head coach now in D'Amico Ryans. So no attachment whatsoever. And there just wasn't a lot for me to buy in on personally. And we saw the run rate regress. We've seen the pass snaps tick up for Singletary, and whether it's going to be Singletary, it's going to be somebody else other than Dameon Pierce going forward.
Yeah, guys, the thing that we know now in hindsight too is that Singletary is good enough to ruin the fantasy value of the back that he is sitting next to in that running back room. Zach Moss was a star this year, right? I mean, he was one of the answers in fantasy football, and he was basically cast aside in Dynasty because we thought he sucked for 3 years. And what's that A plus B equals C, so C must equal A, but all these different. It's Devin Singletary, right? He's one of those guys that like the coaches trust. He's Jamal Williams without the production.
Yeah, no, that's
great. We're speechless.
Yeah.
Show's over.
Yeah, that Matt would end the show on that. Yeah. But we do have some interesting comments in the chat. I know we're like running over, but these
guys, I'm committed to you for the night. Whatever you need to do here. You want to end it, keep it going. I'm good with you. Don't worry about it.
All right. Zach Wilson has been a new man since he saw Donna Kelsey. Wow. Most fourth quarter comebacks, hasn't thrown a pick in 5 weeks from Slashy. Yeah, Chris Ivory was that dude from Slashy.
It was the Jets that he was on at the time. Quick correction, because he got a Chris Ivory Jets jersey to memorialize the incident.
Jake Moody,
Patrick, Chris Ivory.
He was a Saint at one time. He was a Jaguar at one time.
He's a journeyman.
Yep.
Anyway, and Anthony says the porcelain stays cold. It's research driven. So
there
you go.
Funny. That's a good comment.
There you go. The chat is alive. So what else we got? Matt Babich?
All right. So last on our list of struggling sophomores is somebody who I was out on and then in on, and now I'm kind of out on. And spoiler alert, but we got a new quarterback, Will Levis, for the Tennessee Titans. Does that mean we have a sliver of hope left for Treylon Burks, Seth?
Yeah, I think his value's low enough to the point, and I know there's not a lot of evidence for me to, I mean, you could look at the metrics. I mean, it's not great, right? I mean, this could be N'Keal Harry, right? But I'm willing to give it a shot.
Insult. What an insult.
I know. I mean, but there, I don't know. There's something about Treylon Burks. It's like just when I think I'm out, he pulls me right back in. And I don't know if Will Levis is that answer or not. I'd like to see a couple more games. But it seems like this price is dirt cheap, and I'm willing to take a shot if somebody's willing to sell for that dirt cheap price.
Do you, Matt, do you know what quote he just pulled there? Do you know what movie that's from? With just when I'm out, they pull me back in?
Oh, okay. Thank you for repeating it, because I was looking up the score of the Rangers game.
Yeah.
And I
he said, just when I'm out, they pull me back in. He was referring to.
Okay.
He admitted that he wasn't paying attention to what I was saying.
I was paying attention.
Is The Godfather? Is it The Godfather Part 2?
You're close.
Godfather Part 3.
You got it. You got it. But I'll give you credit, because even any mention of The Godfather, that I think that you would get the maybe on Jeopardy you wouldn't get it, but like on Family Feud you'd get it. So it's
been a while since I've seen the Godfather trilogy, but it hasn't been a while since I've seen The Sopranos, and they do that line like every other episode.
I just did a rewatch maybe a month ago. I mean, it took like 6 months because I did it slow, but come on, man. I just we could do a whole Sopranos podcast.
I could do an entire Sopranos podcast.
All right, well, next time I'm on. Next time
I need to be the guy who just watches. I've never seen a single episode of The Sopranos, so I guess I need to. I think
you would like that one for sure.
Okay,
I don't quoted The Godfather.
Who wouldn't do it?
Yeah, I haven't. I'm gonna be honest. I haven't. I've seen the first Godfather. I haven't seen part 2 or 3 yet.
Well, then how the hell did you know that quote?
Everybody knows that quote.
It's a really famous GIF.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, so I've got homework to do. I gotta watch these movies and
Hey guys, so here I'll just do the Treylon Burks thing quickly. This trade was sitting in my inbox, and I won't even tell you if I took it or not. Just call them the teams, like 2 semi-neutral teams. Somebody offered me Treylon Burks and the next year's second for Deontay Johnson. It's sitting in my inbox.
Wow.
It's been there 2 days. I still haven't decided if I'm going to do it or not.
Wow.
There's no answer, right? I mean, because you could see both sides of it.
That's a good offer. Like that's
a good offer.
That's fair. That's a fair deal. Like it kind of depends on where your team's at, but I mean,
I just said neutral. You're both like the 5 and 6. You say,
okay.
you know.
Then if you're in it at whatsoever, I think I would keep Deontay Johnson.
Even if you're for next year, just because you're not in it this year. Remember, we just talked about in the beginning of the podcast, guys. You could be right back in. On that team, I had like 6 or 7 guys on IR. It's one of those things. So, all right, you're taking Deontay because then
I'm taking Deontay as well.
Yeah, that's where my head's at. All right, so we like Treylon Burks, but we don't really like Treylon Burks because if we did, we would take this deal.
I like the idea of Treylon Burks. Like it should have worked. Like it should really work, but for some reason it's not working. And
that's the thing. And if you rewind our dynasty lessons learned clock a few years, we could have a completely different argument about this. But what I wrote in the show sheet notes is I've just been down this road too many times before. Promising rookie, you can give him the excuses of injuries and things like that, but there comes a time where you have to be able to call time of death, and I think we're getting there with Treylon Burks. The only saving grace is that we get to see him with a real quarterback now, but I don't know how well that's going to pan out because I don't know if we can be certain his knee is very healthy. LCL sprain to start the season. It looked like he was going to be out a while and then came back shockingly fast. And then, knee soreness in the same knee in week 4, misses a few weeks, comes back and only gets 2 targets against Atlanta. So how healthy is he? And if we have to suffer through an entire year of him trying to battle through this knee injury, he's not going to look good. And so maybe there's a buy low opportunity there, but at the same time, you have to see something in order to make yourself want to pull the trigger there in that deal. And I think that's probably the perfect deal to put in front of somebody and say, like, are you in or out on Treylon Burks?
Right. Does it change your mind if it's Treylon Burks and a first for Deontay Johnson? That makes it a lot easier, right? Like even if Treylon Burks fails, you just got a first for Deontay Johnson.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. Isn't that funny?
Worst case, it's a roster spot that you gain. But I do want to, it's funny how these things work. You remember that Treylon Burks was basically traded for AJ Brown on draft day, and the general manager who made that trade, I believe, is fired now. So there's no longer with the Titans, at least. So
wasn't that one of those where you knew it was bad right when they did it, right? You were just like,
I think most people thought, like, what? They gave away AJ Brown for what now?
Right.
And you look at what Kansas City got for Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying like they're both great players, like they both do different things, but it's just amazing, like looking back on that stuff.
Some trades you just know, like when the Bears traded for Claypool with like
basically I wasn't going to do it to him.
Oh my God. we
can talk about them trading a second for Montez Sweat, who's going to be on a different team next year.
Well, I just saw something that they're trying to like long term him. I just saw that a note
they can franchise tag him to worst case, but yeah, I don't know, man. I think the Montez deal is a little bit better, but the Claypool one is absolutely atrocious. You can't defend it. Like you knew, like, if the Steelers are trying to get rid of somebody, if Mike Tomlin, who's been around the league forever, if he can't work with Mike Tomlin, I mean, they fleeced the Bears in that deal. And I tried forever to go like, well, there was really no wide receivers in the draft or in free agency, and then they traded for DJ Moore. So
you made the point about Tomlin too, right? Like when he got rid of Antonio Brown for a 5th and 6th round pick, everyone thought he was nuts. Surprise!
Yeah. It's like whenever the Steelers are trading somebody away, like whenever the Ravens are trading somebody away, or whoever you think is a good organization. I think those two are really good. Or the Eagles, like Howie Roseman, whenever Howie Roseman's trading somebody away, it's like, yeah, might not want to be on the other side of that deal most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So great points all around. Before we kind of wrap up and get out of here, let's quick look ahead to 2024. We've been talking a lot about 2024 draft picks. So first of all, Seth and I, we got some pretty good plans, I think, for some off-season content, because we're going to be trying to plan these things called Dynasty Roundtable film sessions. So we're going to try and do some film meets analytics here and get some groups in to actually watch some of these guys in action and break down some film. But so far from what you've seen, Alan, who is your unsung hero of the 2024 class?
Yeah. So, admittedly, I start doing my rookie study after the season's over. But how could nowadays, like even like the casual dynasty player is so aware of all the headline guys. You guys are part of my process for me learning about the rookie. So the thing, and I saw this question, you sent it to me earlier. So I said, I'm not just going to pick some guy and like fake like I know him or anything like that. There's a player that like this running back class is already being pushed down. Like, oh, they're not as good. They're not, it's all about the quarterbacks and the receivers and some of the other, offensive stuff, the tight ends with Brock Bowers. But let me ask you guys, you tell me, is Travion Henderson going to be the first running back off the board in the real NFL draft? And is it, even if he's a second round pick, is he the guy that you guys are looking at that's maybe flying a little under the radar in a sense of like, people are focused on other positions? That's really the guy I wanted to highlight and ask you about on this, with this exercise.
I really like, I think he's at this point in time, he's my RB1. I did like when I was initially going through my first round of just film study and, analytics study, Trey Benson for me was that guy. I mean, Trey Benson runs a 4.37 40, or at least it's on record that he has that kind of upside. But Henderson runs like tough, physical, kind of reminds you a little of Marshawn Lynch, like the way he just grinds it out for every single yard. So yeah, I like him a lot. I think he is like this, because all the attention's on the wide receivers, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Especially Marvin Harrison and Igbuka.
So when you say under the radar, that's what I'm saying. Like this position is under the radar. From my perspective, what do you think, Matt? Is he more like the most likely guy to be the first running back drafted in the real NFL draft?
At this point, I really think so. I think a lot of the questions that were surrounding him, which were mostly driven just from not having that stranglehold on the backfield. And so we're seeing it this year. He's dominating the touches. He's active in a bunch of phases of the game. And he, like Seth said, like he kind of just profiles as the best back right now. And whether you like it or not, being at Ohio State means something.
Yeah.
And so you got Trey Benson, who's at Florida State. And then you have Raheem Sanders, who's at Arkansas. So these are two good programs, but they're not Ohio State. And again, it's hard to quantify, but it's impossible to get away from. There is the intrinsic, Ohio State, Chris Olave, you start playing the name game, all the players that have come from Ohio State and, J.K.
Right.
Dobbins and all these talents. And I think with the way Travion Henderson plays, the competition he's playing and the echelon of the school he's coming from, he's most likely to be the first running back off the board. And he was actually my answer to this question in general.
That was my guy. Yeah. All right, I'm going to keep an eye on him, man. And if I have the 5th pick in my Superflex rookie draft, I'm getting RB1. It looks like, right? There's going to be a few quarterbacks, a couple of receivers. He's going to get pushed down the board, especially if he's, in part of a drafted to a team that already has like a dusted starter. Like, back in the day, Nick Chubb was drafted to a team that had Carlos Hyde. So he got pushed down the board in your rookie draft. So I'm hoping something like that happens to me.
Yeah, it almost feels like the first 3 picks of the 2024 draft are already set in stone. And I guess it could change, but doesn't it just feel like obviously Caleb Williams, number 1, Drake May's probably in the top 3 somewhere. Some team's probably going to be interested in trading
the
up.
Real NFL draft you're talking about.
The real NFL draft, yeah. And then Marvin Harrison. Like Marvin Harrison, to me,
if the Bears get 1 and 2, though, they might go Harrison and Caleb Williams, right?
They probably should. And I love the tackles, like Joe Alt and the other guy from Penn State. I'm
Olu Fashanu. I was actually just about to venture a bet that Olu Fashanu gets taken ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's a trade up to Chicago.
You should make that bet like now on DraftKings, right? If you're in the legal sports betting area, because
if it's me, Harrison just looks like
Calvin Johnson,
unbelievable.
He looks like Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, I know.
He looks bigger than that.
It's like I'm blown. Like when I watch him play, it's like I know everybody feels this way, so it's not a unpopular opinions, but he's unbelievable.
Cool.
Anyway.
Who are you guys underrated? I'm curious about, because I like hearing the people that watch a lot of college football and that are really into it, getting those early takes, because I'll remember what you said here. It'll weigh on me a little bit as I go through my process.
A guy that I've been on throughout the process is Roma Dunze from Washington. He's been one of my favorite wide receivers. He got like good size, like runs a plethora of routes. Like they use him in a ton of different ways, and he great contested catch. He could just kind of do everything. So I think he's going to be a first round. He's risen up the board since, like, so he's kind of like that song on the radio that's getting played a lot right now. So I bet he's going to be a first round pick. So that's not really a sleeper. But I like, I'll tell you a guy I'm a little concerned of, like Xavier Worthy from Texas looks really good. Like he's a little bit undersized, but he's got the speed to burn, like the 4.29 speed. Those are a couple but I'm kind of a little bit worried, like outside of Travion Henderson, like Will Shipley, like some of these running backs, like Braylon Allen is huge. But they're just not, I don't know. I watched Braylon Allen play against Iowa, and I was not really blown away with his. I feel like there's a lot of meat left on the bone with Braylon Allen. So like we're really early in the process right now, but like two guys. I mean, Malik Neighbors from LSU is, I think, unbelievable. Incredible. Like that. Yeah, like my initial, I think it's really strong at quarterback, really strong at wide receiver. Brock Bowers, I think, is I'm very excited about this class. But we're really early in the process, so I don't know if I can give you a good sleeper right now. But like Jordan Travis, I haven't checked up on Jordan Travis, the quarterback from Florida State. But before the college season started, I was really high on him. So I don't know if he counts as a sleeper, but anyway.
Pick one, goddammit. You're like my wife in an ice cream store. She doesn't pick her flavor.
Yeah, I'll go with Malik Neighbors. I don't think any of these guys are sleepers though.
Yeah, you're picking like wide receiver 2 here. Now,
I know. Yeah.
Xavier Worthy could still be a first round pick, but he's also right now slotted to be like wide receiver 5.
That's right.
And he could be a guy that ends up getting to a friendlier situation because of some later draft capital. And he kind of like Josh Downs with draft capital. He's very fluid in his routes. He can take the top off of defenses, but he also has the ability to, take the ball in the short areas of the field and work the yak. He has a good body control on the sidelines. He doesn't, he has somewhat of a tendency to let the ball get a little inside at times, but for the most part, attacks the ball at the catch point. Xavier Worthy has that game-breaking speed, and I know he's a little undersized, but if that's going to be something that drops his value, that's only going to increase my confidence more that he's going to be an unsung hero, because something I believe in, we're seeing. I'm a big hockey guy, and we've been seeing it with hockey for the past few years, where smaller players are learning how to be craftier, shiftier, and more technical than their bigger physical counterparts. And we got the first little dose of that with Devonta Smith. And I truly think we live in an era where that doesn't matter as much anymore. I think Tank Dell is the real deal, and he's even smaller than Xavier Worthy. So if you're going to be, if you're good, if you can get off the press, that's the biggest issue, right? Can they fight the physicality and beat the press? All of these release techniques, and when you have that much respect with your game breaking speed, you can't get pressed as much. So Xavier Worthy's a guy I'm keeping my eye on, just because he's a big playmaker, and he could be a guy who, if he falls to the second round, then I'm going to be willing to pounce. But he's one of my top guys I'm paying attention to right now.
No, that was good. I like hearing. I can tell you're both talking about the class with a lot of passion, and that's what I'm saying, man. I think that you guys do an amazing, underrated job here. I know a lot of people and you have a lot of fans that tune into the show, but it's a utility at this point. Since Dynasty is a year-round game, I think you're doing a real service for everybody.
Well, I appreciate that, Alan, especially coming from you, like on the moderator contributor on the Sonic Truth
moderator,
Dynasty
punching bag. I mean, I have a whole list of titles on that show.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just these are conversations I just love to have. Like I would be on the phone with Matt if we didn't do this show, or a friend of mine, Cody Carpenter, Maddie Kiwoom, we'd be on the phone talking about this stuff to the point where our wives would be telling us to get off the phone, shut up, So this is just something, this is a passion of ours, and we're happy to bring it to the people, and hopefully we can hopefully we can educate and keep the conversation going about Dynasty, because it's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny. Like you were talking about, you have those conversations with your friends about football on the phone, and you're like, oh man, this could be a podcast. I do that a lot with a couple of my buddies. Like we should be recording this. Right. And it's how you get into the content creation thing. Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Just gotta you're buying a $500 microphone, you're buying a lights, you're buying it, and then you're broke.
Yeah. Well, Alan, you've been very gracious with your time. Plug whatever you have to plug. What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, if you at Alan Seslowsky on social media, and if you have satellite radio, we're on every Sunday on SiriusXM, the Fantasy Sports Channel, 9 a.m. If you wake up, you just want Eastern time. So if you wake up, get your cup of coffee, go through your lineups. We're just updating you on all the injury stuff and just getting you ready for the week. So that's Channel 87 on SiriusXM, 9 a.m. on Sundays.
Beautiful.
Matt Babich, what are you doing these days?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at Babich_Matt10 for anyone on the podcast feed. That's BABICH. So my main thing I'm doing right now, Player Profiler, outside of this is writing my weekly article called Everything You Need to Know. So every week I just kind of try and summarize the top usage trends that I'm seeing, and then try and go into some DFS advice, which, to be honest, we've had to tune our process a bit this year, but trying to essentially highlight, who does Vegas think is going to be scoring a lot of points and not a lot of points? Because we can really use, game totals and team totals to our advantage to kind of, pick one person over the other in our start sets and identify, good DFS targets. And then also kind of summing up the injuries. So, some highlights, I told you to buy Devontae Smith right before that spike week. Demario Douglas, I've been talking about him since week 5. So we've had a lot of nice hits in the usage trend section. So be sure to check that out. That drops every Friday on playerprofiler.com/articles.
Seth, do you like Babich better with the beard, like in his Twitter picture, or do you like him clean shaven how he is now?
I think he should really experiment with a mustache, like an Arthur Smith mustache. No, you don't.
No. I think he looks you look like a professor with the beard. You look like a data analyst without the beard.
I know I go through an entire phase where I guess the buzz is generally a little bit longer than this, but then I let it grow to like the point where you're like, okay,
yeah,
you can chill, and then I kind of shave it back down. But you missed it last week. I was Ken for Halloween.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I got the hoodie that says I am Knuff and everything.
I love it.
But I was babyface for the first time in like 5 years. It was the first time I'd fully shaven my face.
There you go. I went over there where I was checking out your Twitter profile. I just followed you back there, and
thank you, sir.
Following Seth now. So everyone should do the same. Like I said, I'm looking forward to more of the. By the way, you know what? You guys mentioned that you write, you do all the video stuff. Just quickly, and then we'll end it up. Which part of the content creation stuff do you enjoy the best? Seth, you said you do all like the YouTube. Do you like designing thumbnails? Like, what is it that you love doing the best out of all the stuff that you do?
I think it's having conversations like this, just about players, about process, about strategy. Yeah. Like, this is the fun part for me. The whole compliance issue, it's necessary work, like making sure people are, supported and doing their jobs, but it's not as sexy as, getting to come on a show and talking about players and, your teams and stuff. So, and giving player takes. So that's what Matt, what's your answer, man?
Yeah, it's the same for me, but I didn't do it this year because of it would be too much responsibility. But one thing I actually did really enjoy was being a game analyst for Player Profiler. So that was one of the first things.
What does a game analyst do?
So they are assigned to I as long as it works the same way. But when I did it, you got essentially one team a week, and you watched every snap of their offense. And so we had formation charters and performance charters. And so I was a formation charter. So I mostly got the Patriots. Shout out to Cody. I'm a Patriots fan. I put him as my preferred team, and he basically gave it to me every week. So every week I got to break down the Patriots and put, who was lined up, like what receiver was lined up against what quarterback, and then how many tight ends were on the field.
So what personnel they're in.
Exactly. So we can fuel the data analysis plus tool on Player Profiler, which has all of this advanced play-by-play and formation personnel data. So, being a part of not only powering that engine, but also getting to be a little bit of a film bro and not only break down an offense for every snap of every play of every game, but also get to do that. Like for my favorite team I actually had a lot of fun doing it. Just didn't have enough time to repeat it.
Yeah, that's awesome, guys. Yeah, good stuff, man. I was curious. I always like hearing what drives them and what their favorite part is, because as you know, when you start doing this a little bit more than a hobby, it does become a grind. It becomes work, and work we love, but sometimes we get away from the things that we do love. I used to write a lot more. I don't do as much writing anymore that I'm doing all video editing and all that kind of stuff. But when I was writing, I was like, man, I wish I didn't have to write as much, so it's like, that's how it goes.
Yeah. And that's how I started too, Matt, is I was a game analyst. Like, gosh, it was probably 4 years ago with Cody. And yeah, like doing that. And by the way, I don't know, we're in the middle of the season now, but if anybody's interested in this, I'm sure you could reach out to me or John Adams.
Absolutely.
And so we're always looking for, but being a game analyst forces you to pay attention to parts of the game that you might miss, right? Like I remember charting a Kansas City game, and I was like, who is that Nick Bolton player?
Right.
Holy cow. Like he just stuffed Derrick Henry right in the hole and drove him back.
Before he was a stud.
This was his rookie season. Yeah. So it's like things like that you notice, and on film, if you're really paying attention, you can have some really just great insights into football. It's just like a lot of this stuff, a lot of people aren't paying attention to because it's hard to pay attention to it all. But if you're watching that game as closely as you are, you're going to come away with some really, really fantastic takeaways. Like I did with Nick Bolton. I was like, I think this middle linebacker the Chiefs have is really good. Like, and he is.
Seth signed up for an IDP league just because of that.
Drafted Nick Bolton with my first overall pick.
Seth, you're a very humble host. I'm going to make sure we don't leave without you, plugging, everything you do for Player Profiler, because you put in a lot of work to keep this engine running. So you deserve your time in the sunlight.
Well, the main thing is just Twitter. I'm up over 500 followers now, thanks to Cody. I think Cody tweeted.
You're figuring out memes.
Figuring out memes, mostly The Office. But yeah, so I'm so thankful for anybody who would follow me and want to hear what I have to say. It's very humbling. So it's at Seth_DIEWOLD on Twitter. And then I have a YouTube channel too, where I post some videos of Dynasty content there as well. Some exciting stuff there that you'll want to be tapped into, and you'll want to like this video and subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel, because we say it every show, so everybody can just check it off the list. I work with some of the best content creators out there. I mean, Alan's fantastic, Theo Greminger, Billy Muzio, the Podfather. I mean, these are great people to work for. And I'm just very thankful that I'm able to do it. It's like I get to say I work in fantasy football. I love it. Hopefully the passion shines through. Hopefully that comes across because it's real. It's real, not just with me. It's real with Matt Babich and everybody we get to work with. So I'm just very thankful for everybody and that we get to do this. And I know I say it every show, but Player Profiler is it's amazing. So and the stuff you guys are doing at RotoWire is amazing too. That's every time now, like for some reason, like I do a starter stream show on Sundays, Alan, and I'm looking on the NFL.com website for the inactives. It's like low, like it's not there. I go to RotoWire, it's there.
Dude, one thing I have to say, one thing RotoWire does really there's a lot of things they do well, but the one thing they do is, man, the breaking news stuff is they sell all their breaking news to Sleeper, to Yahoo, to ESPN. All those notes you see on the NFL.com, all those notes you see from them are powered by RotoWire.
Wow. So good.
Yep.
Yeah, be tapped into RotoWire too, everybody.
Yep. There you go.
Absolutely.
Anyway, you got a bold prediction, Alan, before we get out of here
A bold prediction
for the remainder of the season, or
I got
wherever you
one.
wanna
Ready?
go. Okay.
Just like last year, Christian Watson will rise from the dead in week 10.
Yes!
And be a league winner.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.